The verse that we just read, which is chapter 4, verse 7. No. Right. I read what I read as a preparation. We read chapter 3, verse 8 and 9. Chapter 4 is very interesting. Chapter 4 begins... Chapter 3 ends with the letters being sent out. And there's two letters. And it's the whole thing of it. There's two letters. The revealed letter and the hidden letter. The hidden letter is not to be opened until 1 year hence. Not everybody is allowed to know what the second letter contains, which is that the Jews are the named target. And the open letter, it's not told that, right? Because they're afraid, of course, that they're afraid that the Jews will pray if they know they're in trouble. And if they pray, right, then they might be answered. We want to make them feel as everything is fine. You must feel that everything is fine. You're a completely accepted citizen in this country. We love you, and you're okay. In the meantime, we're planning your decimation, but you mustn't know about it. Right. That's why anyway. Okay. So chapter 3 ends with that. The letters are out. The last verse in chapter 3, the couriers went forth in haste by the king's order, and the edict was given in Shushan, the capital, and the king and Haman sat down to drink, and the city of Shushan was nabocha, confused. Apparently something leaked out within Shushan, but it wasn't allowed to leak out any further. It's a little bit of a thing. I think Rabbi Kaplan, I don't have it here, but Rabbi Kaplan's Torah anthology on this very, very succinctly deals with each problem here in every verse. But whatever the case, chapter 4 begins, Mordechai yada, and Mordechai knew. He knew all that had transpired. There's no open prophecy in this time, but there is Ruach HaKodesh. Somehow Mordechai, being the leader of our people, he knew something was wrong. Something has been done here. There's something going on here behind our backs. And it becomes clear to him in Ruach HaKodesh, and therefore he rent his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried a loud and bitter cry. Whoa. And he came up as far as the king's gate, but only as far, for one may not enter the king's gate dressed in sackcloth, whatever. And in every province, wherever the king's orders and the edict reached, there was great mourning for the Jews, and fasting and weeping and lamenting. Sackcloth and ashes were put on the most prominent. Meaning to say, because of Mordechai, it did become known. The ruse was revealed, was exposed, even though they tried to keep it secret among the Jews. In other words, it was still secret from everybody else that we knew what was going to happen. But because of Mordechai, the word went out among the Jews. In verse 4, chapter 4, and Esther's maidens and her chamberlains came and told her. And the queen was extremely terrified. And she sent clothing to dress Mordechai and to take off his sackcloth. But he didn't accept it. Like, why was she so bothered by him wearing sackcloth, right? She's in the palace. She's already, in a sense, maybe influenced by the palace. Keep everything cool, low key. Don't make any waves, I know I'm here for a reason, but like to have you sitting out there in the king's gate with sackcloth, Mordechai, doesn't help me in here. There's all kinds of things going on here. Doing my best. I mean, just trying to say, like, what's her problem? Let him wear sackcloth. No. She sends out clothing for him to put on, but he refuses. So then, wow. So she summons Hatach, who we know is Daniel, is one of the king's chamberlains, whom the king had appointed to serve Esther. Baruch Hashem. He still didn't know she's Jewish, but he appointed Hatach.
How could they not know?
How can anybody not know, right? Isn't it interesting who Esther is? Read the Chartreuse book. What I'm not saying in the book, what I'm saying in class is not in the book. That's how I work. If I think it's written in the book, I'm very like, how could I say anything? It's already written in the book. Unless I actually read, which I sometimes do, which bothers people. I read out of my own book. Anyway. So she sent out Hathach to the city square and commanded him concerning Mordechai to know what this was and why this was. Ladat mazeh uve'al mazeh. What's going on here? Will you try and ask him what's going on here? Why doesn't he want to wear clothes? So Hathach went to Mordechai, to the city square, which was before the king's gate. And Mordechai, verse 7, this is our verse. And Mordechai told him all that had befallen him, and the full account of the silver that Haman had proposed to weigh into the king's treasuries on the Jews' account, on account of the Jews. It's a difficult construction, and it's on purpose, and we're going to get into a whole nother level of meaning there. But the way it's translating it here is that he's telling over what we just learned about in chapter 3, verse 9, where it said there that he was willing to pay 10,000 talents into the king's treasuries. But here he rewords it, and this rewording is what our whole point is. He rewords it and he says, the full account of the silver that Haman had proposed to weigh into the king's treasuries on account of the Jews, to cause them to perish. So all we have to know on the surface level is that he's repeating what we had in verse 9 of chapter 3. He's telling it over to Hathach. He's adding one word. You'll see it in the Hebrew now in a second. He's changing the construction slightly, and he's just giving over information. For our purposes at the moment, Hathach, I cannot take off and put on clothes. I cannot take off my sackcloth. A decree has been made against us, whether the money was into the treasury or not, but money was offered to destroy us on account of us into the king's treasury. A copy of the writ of the decree was given in Shushan. He gave him. In other words, the hidden letter was still hidden. That was only in the hands of certain people throughout the country, throughout the 127 provinces. It was the revealed letter was enough for Mordechai to know what was happening. So he gave him a copy and he said, give this to Esther and tell her what it means. And tell her to come before the king to beseech him and to beg for her people. And he came and he said to her what Mordechai told her. And she said, hey, I can't go into the king. And that whole story of, I can't go into the king. I got to be called. And so he went back, and Mordechai's answer was, you better go in, otherwise it's going to happen, but you're not going to have any part in it. And that whole thing, it just keeps going. This is drama at its best, right? You, Esther, the heroine, are going to be the one who's been put in the situation to save the Jewish people. You, the Jewish soul. The Jewish people are the feminine, with the male being held back in a state of inactivity. He can't do anything. It has to be through the female. Okay, so what we want here is the Hebrew version of chapter 4, verse 7, which you have here at the top of